What's up, Internet? You're tuned into episode 100 of the Steam Deck podcast. I'm your host, Pete and Bessie, joined today by my very good friends and co-hosts, Mr. Steven Radford.
Hello, hello.
And Mr. Max Wright.
Ahoy, ahoy.
We did it, boys. 100 episodes of the Steam Deck podcast. Golf claps all around, everybody. Thank you all so much.
I can't believe we made it. I thought for sure we'd have had a big fallout. We all spinning off and doing our own things by now. You know, I'd be sabotaging your stuff. You'd be sabotaging my stuff. You know, all in good fun.
Nobody ever crossed Max. That sounds vicious.
Huh? That's just, the shit I say to Pete every week anyway. Imagine if I didn't like you guys.
If we were enemies. Yeah, thank you guys so much here for an incredible 100 episodes. Thank you to both of you for being on the ride with me. This has been such a good time, and it's been, an incredible reaction to the show. It's really been a huge part of the channel's growth and all the success that we've enjoyed since we launched. And yeah, you guys have been an incredible audience, and we thank you so much for tuning in every week.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think I love this show because I can talk a little bit more nerdy than I can on the other two. And today we're going to get nerdy again, which I'm really excited about. And it's always a fun time to get in the weeds, I think.
Yeah, I think for me, my favorite part about this show has been how it's brought Max and I together in our utter lack of knowledge.
Yeah. I like that through Steve, we all seem a bit smarter through osmosis. Like it bleeds out into the screens, and Steve says a lot of really important stuff, and we go, yeah, we agree, we know what we're talking about.
Yeah, it's it's very humbling, because it's on the other shows, I'm happy to win trophies, I'm happy to flex my industry, but when it comes to this stuff, it's come on, we got nothing, we got nothing.
Must be humbling for the audience to have just these three gigantic brains, all led by Steve's gigabrain.
I'm smooth brain over here, really.
Yeah, smooth because it's been inflated to the maximum it could possibly be.
It's pressed up against the edge of your skull. Say, please, man, if you're the smooth brain, I don't want to know what that makes Max and I.
It's wrinkled, but it's like raisin wrinkled.
Yes, exactly. So, I know last week on the show, you guys talked about how we had plans to do a special episode 100, and we have a fun little game worked out. And we are still planning on doing that at some point, but we had such an incredible, there was two huge news stories around the Steam Deck and Valve this week. And we absolutely couldn't ignore them. We knew that you guys would miss the commentary. We didn't want to wait until next week to talk about them. So the plan for now is we're going to cover these big stories today and any of the fallout over the next week or two, whatever. And then when we've got our first free week, we'll do what we had planned for the episode 100 celebration, where we'll play a fun little Steam Deck oriented game. How's that sound?
Sounds good to me.
Sounds good to me.
All right. So Steve, why don't you break down our first story here today?
Yeah, so last week, Valve put out SteamOS 3.6 to the preview channel, and they've been releasing updates periodically. And there was an update that a lot of people noticed, myself included, that mentioned that they were adding support for extra ROG Ally keys. And I think a lot of people just kind of dismissed this. Maybe there was going to be an ROG Ally controller or something. Maybe it was a typo. But Lawrence Yang this week confirmed with The Verge's Sean Hollister that the note about the ROG Ally keys is related to third-party device support for SteamOS. The team is continuing to work on adding support for additional handhelds to SteamOS, and Valve is making steady progress, but isn't ready to run out of the box yet. So it looks like we could be seeing SteamOS coming to other handhelds, presumably the ROG Ally X first, and then maybe a full public release of SteamOS 3 in the coming months or weeks.
Do you think this is going to be an official thing? Is it going to be I don't know, Asus? I can never remember how to pronounce it. Are they going to come out and say, "Hey, you have the choice now of SteamOS or this"? If straight out the box, you press, choose your option, it'll install one or the other, or you can dual boot or whatever. Or is this just going to be, we're releasing the launcher, it supports the ROG Ally X, crack on? What do you think?
My gut feeling is that this is Valve putting out something that people can download and install themselves in the same way that you could buy, say, a PC from Asus and install Linux on it if you wanted to. But out of the box, it will probably still continue to come with Windows. Asus have a deep partnership with Microsoft. I'd imagine that will continue, and they'll continue to install Windows 11 on their devices. So I don't think it's going to be an official option on their side. I'd like to see it. I'd like to see at the point of sale, maybe online, that if I buy direct from them, I can choose to have Windows or SteamOS installed on the SSD. And maybe that will save a little bit of money, because Dell used to do that back in the day. You could have Linux and save on the Windows license if you wanted to. But I don't know that that's going to happen. I think this is more a case of Valve is prepping to have a public release of SteamOS 3. We've obviously seen the Hollow ISO come out as like a community-based port of SteamOS and the version that's on Steam Deck. But I think we're probably going to get an installer for SteamOS 3 that you can just run on any device, and one of those devices happens to be the ROG Ally X.
How would something like Hollow ISO or Bazzite, for example, how would that work if you were to install that on your ROG Ally X now? Would those buttons just simply not work, or is that now because it's baked into Steam, you could still get Bazzite, for example, and have the latest version of Steam installed, and then it'll be supported by the Steam controller configuration anyway? Like, is that how that works?
My guess is now that it's in the operating system at like the firmware level, that it would work. Because Hollow ISO is just a compilation of all of the packages that Valve uses
Hmm.
to make SteamOS function. Someone's put it together into a single ISO image that you can install onto any device. But we won't know until someone does it, until someone kind of bites the bullet and tries this. We're not gonna know for certain. And I also think that you kind of have to want to be on the bleeding edge if you're going to do that. You know, they're still working on this. It's still a work in progress. They're still going to be chipping away at it. It could be that the buttons work, but maybe the audio driver's not finished yet, or
Hmm.
Bluetooth driver's not quite there yet, or graphics driver's not fully supported. So just because we had a note about buttons coming or keys coming doesn't mean that everything else is ready for the prime time.
Yeah,
Good
I
point.
found the article that we're referencing here from The Verge to be pretty illuminating in terms of why we haven't seen, I guess, that future that you've been talking about for so long, Steve, right? Of 3.0 becoming this option as like a general use OS that you could just run on any computing device, right? And there was kind of some specific conversation around that in here that I thought um, did give us kind of a good explanation for why we haven't seen that sooner and why this might be, the first step towards that future, right? There's a bit here pulling from the article where it says, that doesn't mean Asus will officially bless Valve's installer or sell the Ally with SteamOS, of course. And then there's like a little bit of an explanation, right? It says Asus has told me there are many reasons why it ships with Windows. A big one is that Microsoft has dedicated validation teams to ensure its operating systems work across many different hardware configurations and chips. And, you know, uh, kind of pulling back to Valve side of it, it says, and it's not like Valve is suggesting it'll offer SteamOS for rival handhelds anytime soon either. Valve is, quote, making steady progress, Yang tells me, but it, quote, isn't ready to run out of the box yet. So I think that's really interesting because to me, it sounds, I mean, pulling from that, right? Inferring from that, it sounds as if they're in the process of testing it on other handhelds and these other devices, and that just due to what we know about the size of the team that they must have to do that, that it's a slow process, right? And that probably the reason that we don't have a general use installer or something like that, or why we wouldn't see it launch out of the box, at least not anytime soon, is just because it's just not ready. It's probably a few more months, years of testing away before
Hmm.
SteamOS is stable enough to run on devices that are not Steam Deck
Yeah, it's got to be able to really run on, in some form on anything really. If you're going to be able to install it on anything,
as
and
like a general launcher, right? Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Well, we know it does run in some form on other devices. People have been running Hollow ISO on other devices, and that functions okay. It seems like for these handheld devices, these essentially like console-like PCs, that there's going to need to be additional support put in. They've got custom buttons, they've got custom chips in there, they've got all sorts of stuff that they need to be able to tap into. And I would imagine that Valve is going to do it on a case by case basis initially, presumably with the ROG Ally, maybe move on to something like the Lenovo Legion Go, maybe partner up with Ioneo and actually do an officially sanctioned version, unlike the Hollow ISO installer that they were using previously. And then move on to kind of saying, right, we're going to do this for general public release, because I think that is one side that Windows really does have an arm up on Valve, is just the sheer size of the business and the fact that they do have these dedicated teams to just test all of these configurations and plug and play support that came with like Windows 95. They've just built upon that over decades and decades and decades, and you can basically piece together any configuration. You want a AMD CPU with an NVIDIA GPU and some RAM from a completely different brand to your SSD and a completely different brand motherboard. All of that can come together and it can just function, and Windows knows exactly what to do. That functionality kind of needs to be worked into SteamOS if they're going to have that general release. Whereas if you're doing it on a case-by-case basis, starting with the ROG Ally, you know what SKU you're working with. There's only one version of the ROG Ally X, and we can make it work with that and test the waters, see if people actually want this, and then go to a general release.
Yeah, I think that makes sense.
It's just something we've been waiting for some time. I remember when did 3.0 came out where we originally discussed this? This has got to be over a year
It was
ago, right?
it was earlier this year, wasn't it? Or is it
Oh,
last year?
okay.
SteamOS 3, I think, came very early in the Steam Deck's life
Oh,
cycle.
okay. Which is the big one that we were waiting for that we thought was gonna
Oh, yeah, it was 3 point
3.5?
oh, it was
3.5, I
I
think,
thought it
was
was
the big
3.0
one.
as well. Okay, excuse me.
Yeah,
I was
it was
confused.
We're on 3.6.9 now. SteamOS 3 was years and years ago.
Yeah, I'm thinking of 3.5 that we had a big conversation about. When's
Yeah,
3.5 coming? When's it coming? And then that was the big thing of like,
that was
is this gonna
when
be
that was when we
Go on.
thought there was gonna be the general release,
Yeah,
right? And it'd been
yeah.
building towards that.
Yeah, just to confirm, SteamOS the 3.0 came out in July 2021, which is when
Okay.
Valve announced the Steam Deck.
Wow.
It launched alongside the Steam Deck.
3.0 did. What happened to 1 and 2? Well, why do they not
1 and
launch
2
with
were on
1?
Steam machines.
Oh, wow. Yeah, okay. Yeah. All right.
So
Forgot about
they've
those
been working
existing.
on SteamOS for a long time.
Yeah, clearly have. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's like the vision of that, is like is kind of, I guess, potentially gonna come full circle here, right? Like, if they are able to get the general launcher worked out, then it is like you could turn any device into a Steam machine then.
Are you surprised by this strategy? Because I think I remember speaking to you, Pete, and you kind of being cautious on the fact that they would just open this up to everyone because it's kind of taking the secret sauce away from the Steam Deck a little bit.
I I don't know. I think it really depends. I think that there is definitely a overall inherent value to them doing this because I think that if they can create a viable alternative to Windows when it comes to, PC gaming, like that would be huge, right? To be able to kind of um divorce their reliance on who, is ultimately one of their only real competitors, right? And granted, the Windows Store is a joke compared to Steam, but like at the end of the day, like, they are one of the other kind of players in PC gaming, and especially with the kind of push they're making with PC Game Pass over the last couple of years, like they are trying to, remain part of the conversation around PC gaming at least and have that kind of like be an extension of the Xbox brand. And the idea that Valve could have like this general launcher that, whether it's on a handheld PC or whether it's on your desktop, right? That like the best place to go and experience PC games is through SteamOS and then by extension our marketplace Steam. It's like I think my caution is more like, oh, what does that mean for the Steam Deck? Like if every handheld is a Steam Deck, then like is the Steam Deck special anymore? But ultimately, for Valve's sake, who cares? Right? Like if the Steam Deck, if they make a Steam Deck 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever, and there's all these other competitors, it's like it doesn't really matter. Like if
Yeah.
their one unit sells to the people it's gonna sell to, and there's other games in town, but all those other games rely on their OS because it's the best OS and all the people that are playing games on those market or on those devices are ultimately going back to their marketplace to buy games. What the hell do they
Mhm.
care? Right? Like that's the
Also,
power of Steam is that it's the de facto place to play PC games and it doesn't matter how you're accessing it.
I think because of that, because Steam is the place and, whether you're using SteamOS or using Windows, you're still accessing Steam. It allows the Steam Deck to be special in price. It allows it to be cheaper than the others. It allows it to be a better deal because Valve can recoup the same way a console's a good deal. a console shouldn't cost £400, but because they make 30% on every game they sell, it can be £400, and the companies don't mind taking a bit of a loss on that for that reason. Valve's the same. The ROG Ally is what, £200 more expensive than the Steam Deck. And yeah, it's a little bit better in terms of the screen's a bit nicer. It's probably a little bit more powerful. There's things it does that the Steam Deck can't do.
Well, I mean, it's
But is
debatable
that
on the screen. Some people would say OLED's nicer than having the
yeah,
variable
okay, good.
refresh rate.
Yeah, fine. True. But it's also 1080p as well, and it just depends whether that £200 is worth it to you to get those extra features versus buy a Steam Deck, have SteamOS, and it just works.
Yeah. I kind of get the feeling they're following the Android model, that they're going to continue to make their own hardware devices in the same way Google puts out Google Pixel phones, but
Mhm.
also partner with people in the same way that Google partners with Samsung to make the Galaxy devices, and then also have an open source flavor that anyone can use, but like the Android open source project. But that if you want additional features, you kind of have to have that partnership with Valve in order to unlock them. Like, you want Google Play services, for example, on your phone, you have to have that partnership with Google. If you say
Yeah.
want to have Steam baked into the device and you want to run Steam on it at all, maybe you have to have that partnership with Valve. Maybe you want to be able to tap in to control the TDP and do all of those things in the quick access menu. Then you need to have a partnership with Valve. And I could easily see them going down that road where they have essentially then multiple revenue streams from customers, from hardware partners, and then they've also got an open source option that other people can just install on any device that they want.
Yeah, I think it's, one of those things where with a company like Valve, I think the value of something like this has a much farther reach than kind of like the initial wave of products that take advantage of it, right? It's like um investing in your future. This idea that like, we want to be in control of the destiny of PC gaming because that's our business. And like the more, that you can kind of wrestle that control away from Microsoft, even if it is only a marginal amount of players, it's like that goes a long way,
I
and
think this opens up other avenues, though, other than just handheld. It's like, well, what happens when the Decade comes out and that does prove to be real? Does this become the de facto software solution for VR headsets rather than
Mm.
Android on these kind of headless VR headsets because
yeah.
it can access Steam VR? Do we get this on a set-top box that I can plug into my TV like we've been asking for so long, that I can just essentially have like a little mini PC plugged into my TV and I can play the games I want to play or stream it from my big
Well,
PC?
I think even with that, right? Like even if they don't make like an official like, you know, um way to do that. Like if they don't release their own set top box, right? You could buy one of those mini PCs that we've talked about on this show and put SteamOS on it and just use big picture mode. And like it would work that way anyway, right? Like you could pretty much do that now. But yeah, I mean, I think them kind of creating a path forward for things like that is just in their best interest, right? Like the more that they can kind of um consolidate and get more and more people into their ecosystem, right? And have that ecosystem extend beyond just the storefront is yeah, I mean that's where the money really is, right? Is like is controlling um the services as well. And people are already so locked into the Steam ecosystem. Like granted, I think there are examples of where maybe that doesn't always track because like there is like native messaging in Steam, but we all use Discord because it offers better services. But, I think that's the interesting thing about like having kind of this, foundational control over the operating system is being able to like listen to fan feedback the way they have with the deck and iterating on the software usage on that hardware, right? Is like imagine having that relationship with them about the OS, right? And it's like, oh, like a significant percentage of the community is like looking for this kind of integration. Great, it's out, right? We're putting that on the roadmap. Like I think that's what's so appealing about it is like Valve being such an open company and a company that's willing to crowdsource solutions and have that open dialogue with their users is like that could be a really, really powerful thing in a general use operating system, not even just for video game applications, just for everything. And I don't know, it would be very interesting to see them like kind of take a swing in that way and try to like disrupt the status quo of PC gaming or
I think that's what
PC.
they I think that's what they wanna do. I don't think they're interested in being a general compute OS. I think there's enough solutions for that. If you wanna do that, go install Ubuntu or Debian or, any flavor of Linux that you want. I think they wanna own the handheld PC OS market. I think they could see themselves getting back into the living room. I think they are probably cautious about doing it themselves with the failure that was Steam machines, and
They
just
didn't do it
open.
themselves though. That's why it was a problem.
No, but I think I don't necessarily think that that is the reason it was a failure. I just think that Proton was too soon. Those boxes weren't powerful enough. I think it just came a little bit too early, and the Steam Deck came with a compelling argument as to why I would want that. Proton worked with pretty much every game. They put years and years and years of work into that before it was released. The initial version of SteamOS, it required developers to release a version of their game for Linux, and no one was doing that. No one could be bothered to rebuild their game for Linux.
Yeah, it wasn't the
Proton,
market at all, was
yeah,
it?
exactly. Whereas Proton opened that door for developers to just be like, okay, Valve, well, you go ahead and do that work for us,
Yeah.
and we're just going to sit back and continue to make our games for Windows, and you'll make
Right.
it
Mhm.
work for us. Um, but I'm curious what that means. Do you think Microsoft is just going to kind of rest on their laurels and go, you know what, I'm fine to let Valve take over the handheld operating system market, or do you think they're going to come back with some kind of handheld mode or some kind of solution?
Microsoft did recently just update the game bar, Xbox game bar, to work better on handhelds. I really should have thought about getting this up before I started this. Hang on.
Well, what?
Hold
Yeah,
on.
while you pull that up, I
Will
think
do. There we go. Got it. The
okay.
Xbox game bar. Sorry, I know you just said don't worry. There's a new Xbox game bar compact mode that is for gaming handhelds. And yeah, I think it's
But I
just a more
think that's
friendly
the
touchscreen version.
that's the least of people's concerns is like, oh, the Xbox game bar didn't quite work. It was the fact that I'm in Windows and I've got to click the start bar and open it
I
up and
agree.
like move my cursor around with a stick because the ROG Ally doesn't have touchpads. It's
No,
like
I agree,
a
but it's
solution for that.
it's a start. It shows that Microsoft are obviously paying attention to whether they're actually working on like a full handheld mode. I'm not sure, but they are, you know, doing things for the handheld gaming market. They must see there's a demand for these things. Game Bar is a piece of software that I turn off as soon as I get my PC generally. But on a handheld, if it does things that hitting the home button would do on Steam, or if it could maybe even replace those hit the Steam button things on a Windows PC, Windows handheld, if you press the game bar button and it does all the things you want it to do, all the things that Armory Crate does on the ROG Ally, but for across all handhelds, they don't have to have a complete third party thing. That could be the step in the right direction. That game bar is the game mode, and game bar allows you to change things and toggle things and switch your games and things like that.
I I don't know. I'm very interested in what Microsoft's plan is when it comes to handheld because I think that like we've had a few crumbs of stories that like seem to paint a picture for what their plan is, but we haven't really gotten a firm answer, right? Like it's been mostly like Phil Spencer being like, "Oh, it could be like this." I think that would be
Mm,
interesting, wouldn't it be? And when you think about that story we reported on, I want to say earlier this year, but time is a flat circle and it is meaningless to
I
me
think it was
after
last year about the
last year.
hackathon
The
project. Yeah.
yeah, there was like that hacking jam where they were working on a kind
mm.
of a version of a handheld Windows, and that there are a lot of core features of Windows products that begin at hacking jams like that. So the idea that like that there is a version that's in active development, I think makes sense, right? Like that seems to be the case. And when you think about the comments that have been made by Phil Spencer about wanting to have an Xbox handheld, wanting to have he literally called out the Steam Deck and the ROG Ally when he was asked about it most recently by Ryan McCaffrey from IGN, right? Like they had an interview where he specifically said if we were going to do it, which it's something that we are talking about. I think it would be cool. I think it needs to be more like a Steam Deck ROG Ally where it's a native device. But again, it's like he could have said Nintendo Switch. right? He didn't. He said those
He
things.
could have, but he's saying a product where you can run their games. One of them's running their operating system,
Yeah,
and
but
it's
but
not.
that's
He
that's
could have
exactly
also
my
said
point,
like
though.
the Logitech G Cloud, that he was like plugging back in
Yeah.
the day when that first came out.
But
But
that, like that point you just made is exactly what I was driving to. The idea that like he called those out, and I think that makes sense to me as like well, yeah, Windows already exists in the PC market. The Xbox Game Bar and like wanting to have Xbox integration is clearly something that like they're still thinking about whether or not it's effective right now. And then the idea that like they would want to drive towards, hey, we're making a handheld version of Windows that is like specifically targeting, this Xbox handheld that we're creating, but you could also use it on an ROG Ally or any of these other devices. That makes sense to me. I don't think that sounds crazy at all. And whether it's a version of Windows or like Max said, it's like a mode, like big picture mode, where you could enter like Xbox mode on your PC, and like that's what you do when you want to take advantage of gaming specific features on a handheld device. Like, and that could just be the default mode in which it launches. And then if you want to use general PC modes, you launch it in desktop mode like you do a Steam Deck.
Which
That
works
makes
on
a
the
ton
Steam
of
Deck
sense.
perfectly well. Yeah.
I think they start with the Xbox OS personally. I don't think you use Windows as the base. The Xbox OS is designed to be tapped in right at the metal level. It's touching the silicon. It's like got way less overheads than Windows, which is a general compute platform, and you build upon that. And interestingly, and it's probably a glitch, but today, as of the time of recording, Windows games started showing up on the Xbox store, so you could like look through them, but you couldn't install them. And there's a rumor,
Interesting.
so potentially they've got something to announce at Gamescom. If that's the case, who knows? But like, I could easily see that being them testing, Xbox OS on like a and PC, and then getting the Windows storing games that are compatible through that. Because then that's putting their store front and center. And there's also been the rumor that the Xbox is potentially going to allow Steam on the platform at some point, so you can play Steam games on there. There's been a lot of rumors like that, where
I
there's
just
sort
don't even understand how that would work.
I mean, I don't really understand what Xbox's strategy at the moment. The latest rumor is that Forza Horizon 5 is coming to PlayStation 5, and that's like a huge game for them. I really feel like they're potentially shifting their focus back to where they know best as a company, which is let's make an operating system and let's sell that operating system to everyone else and let them build the hardware, and they can just run Xbox OS on it, and it becomes an Xbox and you can install the games that work on it.
Yeah.
Sorry, I completely missed that Forza Horizon 5 news.
It's not confirmed yet, but it's
Oh, I
potentially
see. All
happening.
right, fine.
But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think that the idea that Microsoft would be willing to cede that ground seems unlikely to me. So I mean, is it something that they're gonna like put the same level of priority and care into that Valve is? I don't know. But to your point earlier, Steve, they just have so many more resources. The idea that they could like just outspend them is, that's just the truth, right? Like
Yeah.
they have more money, they have more people to put on the problem. So if they are feeling like, like this is presenting a legitimate alternative, then like, yeah, I think that would probably motivate them to create more features that are specifically trying to court the PC gamer or the general gaming market because, I think that that's probably a not insignificant percentage of their user base. And I think that it's really easy to not cater to PC players right now because there's not really another option, right? Like you could go play on Linux, but it takes a higher level of investment than Microsoft does, right? And for most people, they're just going to go with Windows because it's what's simplest. And I think if there was a out of the box option that was free that you could get from Valve, the people that you trust to give you your PC games, and all you're planning to use your PC for anyway is web browsing and playing video games like so many of us do, then why not? Right. So I think that would be the thing that would motivate Microsoft to act maybe and to like get a proper handheld mode figured out because at that point you're potentially, ceding ground and losing part of your customer base, even if it's, a small percentage that breaks off.
Mhm.
It's like, hey, like that's you don't want to when you're the only game in town, you don't want to let a competitor start pulling any percentage of your market share away. It's just not
Yeah.
I
good
mean,
business.
they've done that multiple times before. You just got to look at Windows Mobile. They were like one of the biggest smartphone operating systems, and now they don't even make an operating system for mobile phones anymore.
Yeah.
Well, and think about that. A big part of that was like they were late. They were late to that competition, and by the time they got there, like they were behind, and they couldn't keep up.
I think am I not right in saying that the reason Google bought Android was to beat Windows OS? Is that the Windows Mobile OS actually came first, and the
That's
reason
correct.
Google
Yeah,
bought Android, yeah, because they were scared of Windows
they were,
Mobile,
and also
which
BlackBerry. So like
yes,
the initial like Android prototype device was called like the Sooner, and it
mhm,
looks like a BlackBerry, and it was called the Sooner because it was meant to come sooner than the one we got, which looks like an
mhm,
iPhone.
That's incredible. But yeah, so
yeah.
was BlackBerry first and then it was Apple? Is that right? Is
BlackBerry
BlackBerry
was
Apple,
first. Have you not
Windows,
seen the movie
Android?
BlackBerry? Oh mate, the
No.
BlackBerry movie is fantastic. It's really well. I've watched it twice.
Yeah,
It's
it was
really worth
like
a watch.
BlackBerry and Windows Mobile and Symbian were all together, and
Yeah.
then Apple
Apple
came
revealed the
along,
iPhone and
God,
then
everything
that
Android
changed.
came
was
along.
what a historically low point for Microsoft. Like all their most public failures are like right in that because it's like the Windows OS and the Zune. And like
Mhm.
Buying Nokia was like a disaster for them. They wasted
Yeah.
billions on
they
it.
got the Surface out of it though. That ended up being good. That worked
Yeah,
out.
and then the Xbox One came out during that era and that period as
Yeah.
That
well.
was the worst part of the worst time of the Xbox brand. Yeah. It's like that whole era was rough for them, huh?
Yeah, Windows 8 with tablets, their initial stab at like Windows on ARM with Windows RT, that was a complete disaster. Like they
Mhm.
did so much wrong back then. Steve Ballmer did not do a very good job.
Do they still make laptops with touchscreens? You remember that?
Yeah, they still
Yeah,
do.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
you can get the Surface Book.
You get the ones that fold that you can get laptops now that you can fold them backwards back on
Mm,
themselves so the keyboard's on the back and it's a tablet, or you can
okay.
take the keyboard off and it's two screens and
Yeah,
you can
I
have
think of
it,
the Surface as like a hybrid kind of thing. It's like kind
No,
of,
Yeah, yeah.
you
they've got
know?
the Surface, but then they've also got the Surface Book, which is a laptop.
Mhm.
Okay.
It's
All
very
right.
And then
confusing.
there's a foldable Surface
Yeah.
phone
No,
as
you're
well,
right.
right? As well.
That's the Surface Duo. I don't think they make that anymore.
Okay. Okay,
Mm.
fine.
And that runs Android, which is very strange.
Yes. Yeah, it does, yeah.
Anyway, it's relevant. We're talking about operating systems.
It
Yeah.
is relevant.
We'll
Actually,
move on.
what
We'll
before
move
you
on to
move on
cell
to
phones.
before
Well,
you move on to
carry on, Max. Yeah.
sorry, I was just gonna say, I wanted to jump back to something you said earlier about whether how they should not focus on Windows, they should focus on an Xbox OS or trying to
Mm.
do an Xbox OS. The reason I think that that wouldn't work is that as soon as you want to do anything slightly more complex than clicking on a game and downloading it, as soon as you want to enter a file system or download something from an internet or use a browser, you're going to want to be in Windows. So if you're developing like the Steam Deck, a a desktop mode, a Windows mode, why would you not just base it on Windows in the first place? And why
I
would you
don't
develop
necessarily
a
think
full?
they want you to have that mode. I don't
Oh, I
necessarily
see.
think they want an open
Oh,
computing
that's a
platform. I
worse
think they
device then.
want their 30% cut. But yeah, but you have the option to install something else, and maybe that becomes Valve's advantage at that point. It's like they continue to allow you to dip into desktop mode and do whatever you want. Whereas with the Microsoft handheld, you can only buy from a certain number of places, and you give them a cut. But I think the majority of people want that. If we look at the Switch, for example, it's nowhere near an open platform, but people love it. It's easy to use. I download a game, it functions. I don't have to mess around and do anything and make sure that the
Yeah,
game works. I think most people just want something to play games on, and I
I
would
think you're
hazard a
right.
guess that a lot, like a large percentage of people, have never gone into desktop mode on their Steam Deck.
Yeah, I think you're right, but I do think that there's the argument to be made there about Android though, right? Where it's like I think that people do want something that just works, and like that's like always been like the Apple model, right? It's like, well, we don't let you in the back end, we do that, but it's like, okay, great, but I mean, I like Android's the most popular platform. Part of it is because it's open and because it can be on anything. And I think that like that could be the advantage is that like, yeah, you don't need to go in desktop mode, but you can.
Yeah,
And
maybe
that's a
maybe
nice
they come up with
advantage.
some kind of alternative to it, but it doesn't have to be Windows. They could
No.
make something that's like a desktop app that allows you to be a file browser and access things in the same way that you've got a file browser and stuff on your Android phone
Yeah,
or
I guess
whatever.
my question is why I don't know. I guess it's like I see what you're saying about like if you build it off the Xbox OS, it's like a simple like you're just running the Xbox OS on this handheld device and it's more like a console, right? And like that makes sense on paper. And given the windows of it all and the Xbox PC app of it all. And it's like, I can kind of see what Max is saying too, of like, well, why not just make a handheld SKU of Windows if that's something that you're already doing and you're already considering, and there's all these other devices that it can interact with. Like, yeah, you could just sell people the Xbox OS, I guess, and put that on other devices, but that feels a little bit different to me than like Windows, right? Like
Yeah,
that.
and I think it should be different to Windows. I personally think that's the route they're gonna go, and, I could easily see them adding some kind of desktop mode to it, but I don't know that I see them investing a lot of time into the gaming stuff on Windows. You know, the majority of their money with Windows doesn't come from gaming. It doesn't even come from home users. It comes from big businesses that want to
Right.
run Microsoft 365 and run
Yeah.
Teams all day and dip into Excel. That's that product. That's that business. And I think Xbox is seen as a strong gaming brand. It's one of the big three. And I think to shift that to become its own platform that you can install on anything, people know what Android is, even though, you know, it kind of came out of nowhere. It's like, oh, that was that Google phone, and now it's on Samsung, and now it's on HTC, and you know, I can get it on anything, but people know what it is. And I know when I go to the Google Play Store, I'm getting the same things on every device, and I think I could easily see something like that with an Xbox OS.
Fair enough. Any other thoughts you want to talk about on this one, see, before we move on?
I'm just curious, if this happens, do you think that you would jump ship to something like an ROG Ally X, or are you happy with your Steam Deck?
There's still no way to interact with uh, a cursor, or there's no touchpads, there's no clicky things on it. It's still things that are limited, and you are forced to use a touchscreen. And I don't think that's enough for me.
What about a Lenovo Legion Go? Similar power level, but it's got those touchpads? Or are you happy with the
Mm,
form factor and
I
your
think it's I
seamless
think it's
experience?
too big. Yeah, I think it's too big. I do like the idea of the detachable controllers. I like the kickstand. There are some features, but I just like the the Steam Deck, to be honest. I like the form factor. I like the way it looks. I like everything about it, really.
Yeah, I just don't think there's been a compelling alternative, really. Like, I don't think that there's. Like, obviously, there are a lot of people that have some of these devices and have good experiences with them. I'm not sitting here saying that that they don't have a place, but I think for me, it's just like there's not any one of them has all of the advantages over the Steam Deck that it would need for me to make the switch. Is where I'm at.
Fair enough.
So, if you guys want to let us know what you think about the next generation of SteamOS and whether or not you would jump to an ROG Ally, or if you have an ROG Ally, if you'd be excited to switch over to SteamOS if you had the opportunity, I'd love to hear from you. So make sure you write into the show all the ways that you can by heading over to flipscreen.games. That's our website where you will find links to all the places we are all over the web, our sister shows, Nintendo Noise and the Flip Screen Games podcast, and all the ways that you can write in to be a part of the Steam docket and get your questions and comments read on the air. However you choose to get involved or show your support, thank you so much for tuning into the show and for being a member of the community. Oh, and this episode is brought to you by our Patreon producers for the month. I usually do that in reverse order. Sorry about that, folks. August, there, of course, Arnold J. River, Christopher Valens, Gabriel Hasselmeyer, a.k.a. Sophie, Steve Stompy, Susan Likes Cats and also Boobies, Ty the Dude, Voodoo Vic, and Wakahula. Thank you all so much for your support over on patreon.com/flipscreengames. You all the realest to the real, and we greatly appreciate your support of this and all of our sister shows. Let's get back into it because another crazy story happened this week. Another article from The Verge.
Another
Valve's
article from Sean Hollister at The Verge. And this article became, which is what blows my mind a little bit, a day before the last one. And so Lawrence Yang still spoke to him.
It's
Yeah.
possible that he spoke to him before that it was published, but yeah, either way. So
It's possible that they didn't also maybe he wasn't aware
guys,
of it until
guys,
later.
guys, I'm really excited how excited you are to come off the bench. Let me tell the folks what the story is.
Fine.
Okay? Okay, I said it was a crazy story, and then you're immediately adding context. Let
Love
me just
context.
let me set the table, and then you can eat. Okay. So we talked a few weeks ago about Valve's hero shooter Deadlock. It had a leak. People have been talking about it. There's a lot of conversation about when it's coming. Early access beta has seemingly begun. It has definitely begun, and we know that because Sean Hollister leaked it. And their explanation was that, well, I'll read what he said. Uh, Nearly 20,000 people have tried the game, including me, and I'm not under NDA. I have signed no contracts and made no verbal agreements. I haven't even clicked through an end user license agreement. Shows a screenshot of the early development build message and everything, right? Earlier today, I received a no strings attached invite to play Deadlock on Steam. Steam claims the game is made by Valve. It displays Valve's copyrighted logo when it launches, and its executable is digitally signed by Valve Corp, right? Proving that it's them. And he just didn't sign the user agreement. He said that he exited out of it and didn't come up again. So I never agreed to anything.
That's not even technically a user agreement. That's literally it's just a little thing
It's
that
just a
pops up and
warning.
says, "This is no development build. A lot of temporary experiments of gameplay. Don't share the game." And then you click OK. But this guy didn't click OK. He just clicked escape and it disappeared. And that was it. So he didn't actually technically agree to anything, which I do think
Yeah.
is a bit it's a bit like arseholey in a way where he's like he's bending the rules a little bit. He knows that sharing it is wrong. You know, it says it. Just because he didn't agree to it doesn't mean it doesn't specifically still ask you.
But it's like
Um,
saying this is on background or this is off the record, and the journalist is just like, no, and
yeah.
and it's like you can't just say that, and
Mhm.
you have to get someone to sign something or agree to something.
Yes.
Someone sent him a link, and someone in our Discord from the community, one at Mango, got an invite to Deadlock and posted about it in Discord. So this is going around.
No, they didn't post about it in Discord. That's alleged.
Yeah, I didn't see nothing.
That didn't happen, and you
No, I
can't
didn't.
prove that it
No,
did. So
no.
don't ban them.
And but that was before they'd even opened the game, right? It was just the email saying you've been invited.
That's
So
true. All they said was that they'd been invited. They didn't share
yeah,
any information about the game. I just want to. They didn't do anything
That
wrong.
is a fact. Do you
yeah.
remember that?
I mean, there were almost 30,000 people playing this over the weekend. It's in the Steam charts, and Valve has said nothing about it.
They
They
haven't even
refuse to comment.
acknowledged that it exists, which is
No.
Yeah.
hilarious. Like,
Which is when we were talking about it before, it was like, this is like people know about this. Then a couple of weeks or last week, there was like a subreddit that had like 15,000 people in it. Public subreddit. Again, why aren't Valve mentioning this? Sorry, Pete, what's up?
I'm sorry. I'm skimming the article to see if there's any other details to add here, and it says that if you're Steam friends with someone, they can invite you to play.
Yeah, yeah, they can. And Sean got banned at the end of the article. He posted an update
Yo,
saying that
wait, we gotta play with Mango. We gotta go play this. Are you kidding me? We can't talk about it, but I
That
want
is
to
a good
try it.
point. Why have we not been given
We should absolutely go try it. Oh my god, we're Steam friends.
it's like all the years mean nothing.
So okay. Anyway, sorry, I didn't mean to derail you, Max. You were in the middle. That was my handbrake for the episode. Go ahead.
I cannot remember what I was saying, is the problem now.
oh, so I think we were talking about the fact that what we spoke about off mic. I'm convinced that they want this to leak. There's a
Yeah.
24-minute video that Sean Hollister posted on YouTube of an entire match. They have not submitted a takedown request. They've not acknowledged anything. They've not taken anything down that's leaked over on X or Reddit or anywhere on the web. Whether that's
Yeah.
because they don't want people to know that it's Valve making it, but we can see the listing on Steam DP for Deadlock. We know it's them. We know they published the game. We've got yet more evidence from Sean's reporting here that it had the Valve logo and the executable is signed by the Valve Corporation and that only they have access to that certificate, so it couldn't be anyone else. So it's very, very strange. I don't know if they're just gauging interest whenever it leaks and seeing how it goes. They're clearly in the midst of a big play test. How they choose who to invite is anyone's kind of guess. I mean, Mango said that they played a lot of Team Fortress 2, so maybe they're looking at past games. Maybe they're just kind of it started out as a friends and family test, and it's kind of grown exponentially because they're allowing anyone to invite them. I don't know.
I'm looking at there's a couple of featured comments on the article from Tom Warren, another reporter at The Verge, and he's comparing it to Monday Night Combat. I don't know if you're familiar with that one. But there's also a couple other little bits here where he does say before you ask, the game supports Steam Deck. So that's pretty interesting too. Looks like it might have Steam Deck support right out of the box, which would be cool.
Are
Um,
there any like how does Overwatch work on the Steam Deck? Does it run well? Is this gonna corner a market for the Steam Deck of this kind of
I mean,
shooter? 'Cause I'm sure there's probably a
I
lot
think
of
it would anyway because Overwatch 2 has not been well received. You know, like if this comes out and it's good, then I mean,
That's true.
this
This
could
could
be
be
the
the
new de
one.
facto hero shooter, right? I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know what the numbers on Apex Legends look like these days, but aside from those two, like, what are the other big hero shooters
Uh,
right now?
So right now, Overwatch has 30,000 concurrent players,
This
and
had that
Deadlock
many in beta, so
Deadlock currently has 26,000.
Wow.
yeah.
Okay.
And
So
it's
I
not
mean,
and it's not even out
Doesn't
yet.
exist.
You know,
Doesn't
it
even
doesn't
right.
even
exist
exist.
technically.
So think about that. Like that's pretty huge. Um, I think that that's pretty interesting, Steve. I think that you might be onto something there. That even if it like wasn't an intentional leak where they weren't like it wasn't like something they coordinated with him that they're like whatever, you know, it's like it got good press, so who cares? Because he did provide an update where he said, "Turns out Valve was not fine with me trying Deadlock with friends. I've been banned from matchmaking. Oh well, please feel free to make fun of me in the comments." So it's like, you know, to your point, they got an exclusive interview the next day, right? Or so it's like, I mean, I don't know. It does seem like they don't seem too upset about it, whether or not it was coordinated. But you know, just to comment on something that you said earlier, like I do think this was like a pretty uncool thing to do. You know, like I get doing this and wanting to get the scoop and everything, but like you know, you brought up the like off the record thing, right? Where it's like you need to have something in writing, and it's like, yeah. And I think there is a reasonable expectation for certain things like this, where it's like when you get invited to a beta and they're like, don't share the don't share information, don't share screenshots, don't share video. It's like, yeah, it's like it's kind of understood that you're not supposed to do that. And whether or not you signed an NDA, it's like
Then why let an invite go out to a known journalist at The Verge without some kind of "This is under
because
embargo, you need to sign this
I
NDA"?
mean, that's the thing is like I think you're probably right, but I mean like they banned him. So
They
like
Yeah.
banned him from matchmaking. He can still play the game. You know, he can still he's still in the test. He can
yeah,
still play with bots. Like, if you were really gonna ban him, would you not revoke access to the game entirely rather than just playing with your
Yeah.
own
sure.
friends?
But it's like, is it possible that the reason they didn't revoke that access is because this is someone they have a relationship with? Like he reports on the Steam Deck all the time.
Yeah, quite
Um,
possibly.
he
And,
gets
you know, that
exclusive
would look,
interviews.
but, you know, he I think
Even
he
even
had
remove
to
the optics
imagine
from it,
that.
right? Like remove like maybe he did it and was like, "Oh, I really genuinely didn't think it would be that big a deal," and they're pissed about it. It's like, okay, well, yeah, whatever, right? But it's like doesn't mean you're gonna necessarily burn this bridge with the Verge over it because it's like nothing materially negative happened, right? Like it's like the worst case scenario is that people talked about the game. Okay,
Mhm.
great,
Which we've
looks like it's
seen
a
for
good game.
months at this point.
Yeah. Well, and again, it's like it looks like it's good. If the game was received poorly, then maybe that would be a different story. But it's like
Yes.
every story about it is like, oh shit, like this is crazy. Not, oh no, this game looks like it's in trouble.
It's not got the Concord, you know,
Stink on it.
yeah, where people were immediately down on Concord, whereas people because they haven't even shown anything of this game and people aren't being negative about it because they're just playing it, I guess.
Also a Valve
I
game, right? Which gives it
Yeah,
a leg up. People like Valve and they want to
absolutely.
like them and they have a track record of putting out good games. So
Yeah.
I think it's kind of a foregone conclusion that it's going to be fun.
I've seen a lot of people in response to this article on Twitter calling out Tom Warren, not Sean. I didn't know Sean wrote this until you said before we started recording. I
They
assumed
just
this
saw
was
it was
Tom
the Verge
Warren.
and they're like, ah, Tom, you
Yeah, well, I think
scumbag.
Tom had shared it, and then Tom
Yeah,
said that he never.
Tom shared an article by a coworker and everyone just piled on him.
They
And
did,
I'm just
yeah, no, but
like,
they
"Poor
were
Tom."
they're all saying like, "Oh, you deserve this," "Oh, you shouldn't break this," blah blah blah. But I saw a lot of people making the comment I agree with personally, which is, what do you think a journalist is? Do you think a journalist is there to be at the beck and call of the publishers at all times, or when there is a game that has 20,000 people playing it and it's an open secret and you've been invited to play it? Is it not the role of a journalist to show that, report on that, be a part of that? Actually,
That's my thought on it, Max. They went back to Valve for comment. It's the same as any story that, you know, if it wasn't a video game and say, you know, an unpublished manuscript for a book arrived in their inbox, they'd read the book and then they'd probably be like, "Hey, look, you know, JK's writing Harry Potter 9," and like would do an article on it.
Yeah, but I think
yeah,
there's a difference between those things. And like, you know, I think the nuance around something like this is something I'm maybe more sensitive to because like I literally went to school for journalism, right? So like there are just things that you're like that you're not supposed to do. And I think that like there's a big difference. Jason Schreier has talked about this a lot, right? There's a big difference between reporting on something that a company doesn't want to be public because it presents them in a negative light, or because it, is trying to, you know, like skirt the law in some way, or skirt the fact that they're like, not paying people properly or not treating workers fairly, or there's a hostile environment. That's actual journalism, right? Like leaking a video game is not the same
Is it
thing.
leaking a video game when the video game's available to play? All they're doing is saying, "I played this game that Valve invited me to play," and
No, he posted 30 minutes of footage of it. That's different.
yeah, okay, fine,
If
but
he had written an article of been like, I played this game and this thing happened and I didn't sign an NDA and I got in, and this, like, reporting on the fact that that as a phenomenon is occurring is different than putting out, here's 30 minutes of this game that I was privately invited to play and now I'm putting it up publicly. Yeah, like I'm not going to sit here and say that he's like a terrible person, and like I think if they had like permanently banned his account or were taking some serious action against him, yeah, I would absolutely come to his defense. But I think as it stands, when you're someone who's a journalist that has a relationship with a source and you kind of go over their head to publish something, it's like, I think that that is not cool. Like, and it's not to say that like, his job as a journalist is to like do PR for Valve. It's not. But I also don't think that like going over someone's head to spoil a marketing beat is like this, like,
That's the thing, Pete. I don't think it's spoiling a marketing beat. I think this is somewhat coordinated. That
and maybe that's the case, right? And we talked about that. And if that's the case, then hey, then that's, we're literally doing exactly what they wanted. And good on you.
you
You did
don't
it.
share this game to probably 50, 60,000 people. If there's 26,000 concurrent, it's probably around double that have
sure.
access to the game.
Right.
I don't think you share it to that many people and expect it to say secret.
No, but
You
I
can't.
I don't think that that's a reasonable comment, because every large video game goes through beta and an early alpha and then an open beta, and
And at
there are
that
rules
point,
about it.
Pete, we usually have heard about the game and the name and have seen a trailer and know that
Acknowledge
it
that it
exists.
exists. Yeah, that's true. That's very true. Yeah, so I don't know. Maybe that is the case. But it's like that also feels weird to me, because if it's coordinated, it's like, why wouldn't you also acknowledge it, right? Like
Yeah,
it's like,
maybe it drops at Gamescom. Maybe this is like gonna be a game that we can play in a week's time.
I was
That's
thinking that the timing of that does seem like
it
that
really
is
promising.
does,
interesting.
doesn't it? Yeah.
Yeah,
There's new
yeah, you might
reveals
be onto
happening at
something.
Gamescom next week. We might even be talking about the official release of this game in next week's episode. You
You
never know.
gotta imagine it's imminent though, right? If there are this many people in a play test, it's like, I mean, it's that doesn't sound like an early alpha, right? Like that's pretty, it's competing with Overwatch in terms of concurrent players. That's pretty that's a pretty healthy server population, so it's
Yeah,
gotta be close.
for a game that doesn't exist.
I look forward to this being shoved down our necks whenever I open up Steam for the next year. And
Yeah.
I'm sure that it will be extremely popular for them, but I really, after watching the footage, don't have much desire to play the game. I was never a big Overwatch guy. I don't know what you guys think, but
I
I
liked
loved
probably
the
Overwatch
not for
original
me.
recently.
Overwatch.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
I
was a
played a
big
lot of
Overwatch.
it. I tried to play Overwatch 2 for work reasons, to be honest. And then immediately just got bored of it. So
Yeah, I was an early adopter on Overwatch. I really enjoyed it. I played it for probably 2 or 3 years and then fell off, and then when 2 was coming around, I had that kind of like, "Oh, yeah, maybe I'll get back in. Maybe now's the time to jump back in." And as soon as it came out to, you know, the opposite of fanfare, it was very easy to be like, "Okay, never mind. That's fine. That's done."
yeah.
It's
The,
just one of those things where, like, I'm not hard up for things to do, right? So it's like if there's a game on my radar, especially if it's a multiplayer game, and the reaction is a thud, even from the people that were previously diehards, it's like, yeah, I mean, what am I gonna waste
Yeah.
my
Yeah.
time and money on it? No, I'm not, you know?
the Switch release of Overwatch is what brought me straight back into playing it. I played loads of it on the Switch and then moved on to the PlayStation and PC as well. But the Switch release is the one that got me because I could play it in person with other people. And maybe if this game comes out and it's good and it means that me and my buddies can get together in the same room and play a
Little
game
LAN
in
party of
LAN,
Max's.
yeah, an online LAN party, that maybe that would be maybe that'd be worth it. Maybe I'll give that a go.
Man can dream.
Yeah.
Yes, I can.
A very, very, very interesting way to release a game, and I really do think that some of this was intentional. I can't see that it wasn't. But we'll see, I guess.
Yeah, I guess I don't know, but I see what I see the conspiracy you're laying out here, and I think it does make sense, and it's certainly not unheard of for like how Valve likes to do business. So,
Yeah.
but I mean, either way, I think it looks like it's going to be a big hit for them. So that's pretty exciting. I mean, it's been what since Dota 2? Is that the last game they? No, I mean, I guess
Well, Counter-Strike 2 was the
yeah,
last
that just
game.
came out. Yeah, yeah.
Oh
And we
yeah.
had
What about
Artifact
Artifact?
as well, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't remember Artifact
It's
at
that
all.
It was the
game.
card game that came
Oh,
in
right,
and
their
went.
Hearthstone. Right. Okay.
Yeah.
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 Yeah, that
There
was
was also a rumor a couple of weeks ago we didn't speak about that there's another Half-Life in development that people have found, like, you know.
Oh, Alex. Okay.
Oh
They put out a lot
yeah.
of games since Dota
Oh
2.
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
They're not games I play, obviously. But this one's interesting to me.
Can anyone remember the name of the this is just a fun quiz for you, and people can shout at the screens all they want. Do you remember the name of the Mojang card game that they spent a lot of time working on? They were talking all
Oh.
about it. I don't think it ever
It
came
was like
out.
something X2 or whatever it was, wasn't it? It was like a weird.
No, you're thinking of the one that
I was
just
They had that Shapes game. Yeah.
so
No,
they
I can't remember.
Do you know what it is, Max? Have you got it on your screen? If not, I'm Googling it.
I know it. I do know it. Yeah, because I remember there was a. Well, actually, here we go. Here's a fun clue. They were legally. There was a legal. They tried to trademark the name of it, and then a Microsoft-owned company got upset with them, and they couldn't do it.
It still exists. So it was called Scrolls, and now it's called
Yes, it
Caller's
was.
Bane.
Rolls,
Wait.
right.
Oh,
Yes.
okay. That's that. Right. Okay. It just exists.
It still exists. Yeah.
That's been going for 10 years.
Yeah.
There you
The
go.
last
Oh
update
no,
was in
hang on. No,
2019.
wait. The server shut down. The servers were shut down in 2018.
Thanks for 100 episodes, everybody. We love you. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Steam Deck Podcast. Thank you for being a part of the illuminating conversations and the nonsense handbrakes that make up this incredible podcast that we do for you every week. Thank you for being a listener. Thank you for being a member of the community. We love you oh so much. Final words from you two boys.
Thank you very much, and thank you, ChatGPT, for knowing who I am. Unlike Max.
Yeah. Fuck you, ChatGPT. My final words are 100 more episodes, boys. 100 more episodes.
Here's to 100 more. All right, gang. So remember, if you want to get involved, if you want to show your support, if you've never checked out our sister shows, Nintendo Noise and the Flip Screen Games podcast, you can go do all that and much more by heading over to flipscreen.games. That's our website where you will find the links to all the places we are all over the great, glorious, and disgusting internet. However you choose to get involved, we thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Steam Deck Podcast. For the crew, I've been Pete. He's been Max. He's been Steve. We'll see you next week.